Hearing those sounds is like going through a time machine. A time machine long ago that took us to a greater time where video games were starting to evolve. PlayStation 1 has had many great titles throughout the years, and I played quite a few, ranging from Metal Gear Solid 1 and Resident Evil. But at the time I was too young to play them, so I could never understand the concept, instead sticking to Crash Bandicoot and Spyro. Strangely enough, I've never heard of this Capcom title known as Dino Crisis. And well, this week I played it, and I want to give you my thoughts on it. So I haven't had a PlayStation 1 since the early 90s, so the best way to play Dino Crisis naturally was through the emulator, in which obviously I turned up all the settings to make it run just that bit more better. And the cool thing is, all the sounds just really reminded me of what it was to be a kid again. Booting up this game, I didn't really know what to expect. I haven't really seen any reviews on the game, apart from a few commenters and subscribers on my channel recommending that I play Dino Crisis. In a strange way, it was kind of refreshing and a little bit eerie going back to the PlayStation 1, seeing the old graphics and the whole menu interfaces. It instantly felt like a warm welcome playing this game, as it felt just like it was when I played Resident Evil 1. Everything seemed very similar and very familiar on the layout and the setting, even the characters kind of reminding me of the STARS unit. And also like Jill, the female protagonist, we would play as Regina. So I was going into this game with a little bit of ease, knowing that it was very similar to Resident Evil, but boy was I wrong, because it had its own differences, with its unique qualities and its complex gameplay elements even for its time. Admittedly, this game became quite a challenge for me. Instantly I felt on edge, as entering through the doors it has this black screen moment in one only can wonder what is beyond the door. The whole aspect and meaning behind these games is survival horror, and that is really what it encaptures, as even at the time they couldn't use the interface to just open the door like the modern games such as the Resident Evil remasters. There was something really eerie and kinda scary about not knowing what was on the other side of the door, having to have the intense loading screen as you was going through. At the start of the game, it was highly exciting. It reminded me of just playing the classic Resident Evil game where you have to go around and find keys and items and objects, even pushing certain materials out the way. And it doesn't exactly give you a walkthrough or a guide like most modern day gaming these days, making it all the more challenging to sometimes even know if you're going the right way. Instantly I was taken back and reminded just how great video games were, but how a lot more challenging they are back then than they are today, where everything basically is just a hand walk through the park. You was having to find different means and ways of being able to get around and testing different doors and searching areas of the map, all without no waypoint or anything at all.
As long as that's the situation, there's not a lot I can do. Why don't you see if you can gain access to the backup generators on the ground level?
Aside from the map that would sometimes give us a bit of a clue on where we're supposed to go, we had to really listen in carefully to the dialogue of what the characters were saying to get a good idea on where it is we may be going. Already the opening of this game was really well done. It had the whole aesthetic and feel about it that just made it quite horrific, especially coming across this dead corpse and seeing the body torn apart in PS1 graphics, and man does it still look good. The beauty of it all is it just feels like one big giant mystery at this point, and especially being a newcomer to this game, this makes it all the more exciting. And at this point in the game is when you come across your first puzzle within the generator room to try and get the power going to get through to different doors and sections, with the concept being pretty straightforward, such as making sure the red pylons first, then the blue, the green, and then of course the white to access the generator. It's a pretty great way to get you warmed up in terms of what was to come next, as the puzzles at the start seem very straightforward. So by the time I came out of the generator room, I didn't expect to run into a Velociraptor, which in itself was scary as shit, especially when it jumps out at me unexpectedly like that. And as you can see in the footage, I just decided to run away, because being a player who plays Resident Evil, I realize how important it is to conserve that ammo. Trust me guys, I'm definitely not scared. Oh, well, maybe a little. It was just like the moment within Resident Evil 1 when you first had the encounter with a zombie that eats this guy and takes his head off. Whilst that moment was pretty scary, it wasn't as scary as the likes of seeing a dinosaur. I mean, those things can run up to high speeds, and a zombie's pretty slow, so that was quite a surprise. So far, the story seems super intriguing, as we're trying to look for a missing government agent, along with trying to discover what it is Dr. Kirk has been getting up to, with his shady experiments and secret dealings with the military. Once you make it into the facility, this is like the bread and butter of the game. Most of the game from this point takes place within inside the facility, which awfully reminds me a lot of Resident Evil 1 within the mansion, as the entirety of the game is practically structured around being within inside the facility, and the facility itself having its very unique qualities with its more scientific approach within its puzzles and its codes, that to being a Resident Evil 1's more architectural type puzzles that are based around the objects within the mansion. Dino Crisis, just like Resident Evil 1, even at the beginning stages of the game, were already the meat and gravy and the dessert all in one. It's like most games usually takes a bit of time before it gets good, but this game does it really well at the start with a sense of the unknown and searching around this facility in order to find your bearings on where it is you're supposed to go. The sense of urgency and fear, knowing that you need to gather as many supplies as you can, because you just don't know what's going to be behind every door. And the beauty of it being a survival horror, conserving your items and ammo is a big deal. Unlike the other Resident Evil games, especially Resident Evil 6, just felt like more of a shooter than it was a horror or survival. The element of having the lack of ammo and items and the fact that you have to obtain them in such a way as Dino Crisis is needing the plugs to unlock the doors to get the medicine or the ammo just felt that all the more intense. So Commander Gale is missing at this point, and already it's quite intriguing to know if he's alive or if he's dead. But at this point we gotta focus on the mission, in which Rick, the most base character in Dino Crisis alongside Regina, helps us out by being the IT technician and giving us a good idea on what we're supposed to do, as well as unlocking certain doors.
Okay, then I'll take care of the shutters that are blocking the way. You work your way in, grab the dock, and then rendezvous back here.
And I'm not gonna lie, I'm sure like you guys when you first played this game, sometimes you were scratching your head thinking, what is it am I supposed to do with this keycard I've just found, or this particular safe that contains a special item? It definitely feels a lot more super rewarding when you find the answer to your problem. I mean, the cool thing about Dino Crisis as well is that it has these cool little side objectives where you can find certain attachables to your gun to make them a lot better. Because even at the early stage of the facility, you need all the firepower you can get, along with the shotgun and any attachables and additional ammo you may find along the way. At this point I was looking around furiously and getting a little bit agitated as I was trying to find the next section of the DDK code to get to the next unlockable door. But little would I know at the time that that phone on the table was actually a way of being able to call the pager of one of the facility workers in order to get his fingerprints so I could re-register his data on the card to unlock the door. I mean, I was confused as shit at the time. And feeling like an anxious wreck as a Philosopher Raptor has made its way through the door, I decided to let spray and make good use of the shotgun. And it worked. Well, sort of. I kind of became dinosaur food for the first time ever, but it was pretty cool to see the death screen animation nonetheless. So anyway, I make my way to the bottom entrance of the facility trying to enter the elevator hall, and having a very tough time trying to figure out the password, just trying whatever I could I suppose, before something finally hit me like a light bulb idea, and I managed to get the password right, of course. Admittedly, like an idiot, I wasn't reading the paperwork properly that gives you the guide on how to figure the puzzle out, so I had to go back and reread it, and yeah, rule of thumb guys, make sure you read everything you see in some games, especially these old classic titles from Capcom. I guess I was getting too comfortable with the modern era of gaming. I mean, damn. So anyway, I found the researcher and all was good. I mean, one arm was still intact, so I could still get the fingerprints. Only problem was I didn't have the device at the time to get his fingerprints, and in turn, ended up having to go around the facility just that bit longer to find what I needed. So it turns out Gale's okay, and falling off a 1,000-foot cliff kept every single pixel intact. And one of the most intriguing features that I loved within Dino Crisis was the option to pick the narrative on how I wanted the story to go, with Gale's idea to go directly underground to find Kirk, or taking Rick's idea to rescue Tom, in which when a raptor attacks Rick and you, he saves your life. It's really cool how Capcom had this element in this game, such on an early console like PS1 to make narrative decisions. Kinda reminds me of the also similar scene on Resident Evil 1, where if you decide to rescue Richard in the given time, he helps you defeat the snake, giving you the awesome option to change the shape of the story, giving you several endings and outcomes.
That punk is really starting to get on my nerves.
For most of the game, I chose Rick's ideas. He seemed like the most sensible one, as Gale just seemed like a bit of a loose cannon. But you guys let me know what you picked. So with Tom being injured and Rick tending to his wounds, we had to do the other puzzle to get the elevator working again, which was quite straightforward. But as the game started to progress, the puzzles got a lot harder. And the second encounter was quite daunting and actually felt like a bit of a flashback from watching Jurassic Park with the flying dinosaurs, but thankfully it got cut up into Dino stew, making my trip a little bit easier. It's worth mentioning how damn good the physics are in this game, with the dinosaur actually picking you up and throwing you around, making you susceptible to bleed and having to heal yourself. And the healing methods in this game are way better than Resident Evil, as if you're bleeding out, you can use the hemostat to actually cure yourself from bleeding. And being able to use different aids you find along the way to be able to mix and combine, either to make poison darts or to make sleep darts to make the dinosaurs go to sleep. It was a really refreshing take on a game and being able to actually kill the dinosaur or take them out non-lethal. The menu system was super useful, and giving on the certain items that you could have, there was always something you could make in terms of medicine or darts. So I take the elevator down to the carrying out room where you've got to use the crane and move the boxes out of the way in order to get to the next section, which was pretty fun actually, and was still pretty tough at times as you had to make sure you move the right container, otherwise you're just blocking your own path. So unfortunately Tom's dead, and even more unfortunately I couldn't get that badass MAC-10 Uzi that I wanted to get, but either way, beggars can't be choosers, right? And if you guys remember back in this video I was saying about how I needed the fingerprints, well I managed to find the device that I needed for such thing in order to access through different sections and levels into the game. But at that point I didn't realize that I had to travel quite a bit around in order to come back to the eventual elevator room that I'd need to go back to later in the game, but thanks to the fingerprint device I could do that. That's the beauty of Dino Crisis and Resident Evil, is you find yourself traveling through an entire facility or mansion, which is so big and vast, and where certain rooms might have certain key cards or codes and keys in which you'll need to go back to where you started. In some cases, and especially in the case of the elevator room, in which it heads you down to the main facility which is based underground. I believe there's 7 DDK codes in total in this game, and each of which open up main sectors into the game that have different avenues in where you can find different items and objects and collectibles for your weapons and perhaps more codes. I don't know about you guys when you first played this, but at times this game felt like it could be a bit of a maze and you get lost and lose track. So I finally got the ID card to go in the elevator to get to B1. And this unexpected dinosaur jumped out of the flippin' elevator, almost tearing my limbs off. Unfortunately I couldn't make this dino go extinct, so I had to put its ass to sleep, at least for a little while. So searching around B1 facility for what seems like forever, I need to go and get myself an ID card from this gas chamber room for the library terminal. In order to do that, I gotta punch all these different kinds of buttons to make sure I get the color sequence right, to make sure the room is no longer full of gas.
Here. This will give you access to his personal lab.
One of the most iconic moments in the game for me was the interaction with the T-Rex. That was insane. Once that T-Rex had busted through the window, I thought he'd be happy with the snack that he just got, but it turns out he wanted to come back for seconds, and yeah, once again it didn't end well for me. I mean, at the time I didn't know if I was supposed to shoot the dinosaur or maybe wait and run at a certain time, and in the end I ended up getting eaten.
What? What the fuck?
Okay, on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Thankfully, there's such thing as the resuscitation medicine on this game, where if you die, it can bring you back to life. So thankfully I had quite a few of those. But during this time in the computer room, I think Dr. Kirk had shut down the entire facility in the computer room, so we couldn't escape. And yes, I spent quite a while solving a puzzle that was actually fairly easy, come to think about it. I mean, one simply just has to match the sample on the screen by making sure they pick the right pieces of the puzzle and make sure that they're turned in the right direction. After feeling really proud of myself, finally the systems were back online. But everything about this game so far really does have me intrigued, and I just love the music because it just adds to the intensity of the entire situation. So of course I take Rick's strategy because it seems like the safest option. I mean, Gale's fucking insane. The guy practically wants to run through a horde of dinosaurs. I actually prefer to keep my limbs. The beauty of this dialogue option is it makes the replayability for when you come back to play the game all the more of a thing, which is actually really cool to keep you coming back and play and get rewards and certain things. But if any of you crazy guys chose Gale, let me know what happened. So guys, this has to be one of the most epicest fails within Dino Crisis ever, admittedly. I was trying to get through the escape hatch, but in order to do so, I had to figure out this picture puzzle in where you see sequence letters on the screen and you've got to remember them and then type the code in. And boy, was that difficult. At first it was going really well, because all you have to do is memorize at least 4 letters. But I didn't know that you'd have to memorize a lot more than that. I assumed that the first time was the only time you needed to do it and not continue. But if I knew that I had to keep doing it, I definitely would have had a pen on hand. If some of you memorized the entire thing, then man, you got a good memory. But for me, I couldn't tap into my inner Jedi powers, and in turn, I ended up having an epic fail where I ended up getting locked out of the safety room.
Thing I can do. I have to find another way to punch through.
Regina, locate the communication facility and call in the extraction chopper.
You can't do this. I have rights.
According to command, your government property, pal. I suggest you take it up with them.
No, they can't do this to me. They deserted me 3 years ago and now they want me back? This is preposterous.
The entire dialogue in the game is really well done. I love the little goofy sequences and the absolute tantrums that Dr. Kirk pulls, which he kind of reminds me of Mr. Birkin from Resident Evil, this crazy mad scientist. But it's kind of funny how in him and Gale have this hilarious back and forth. And to be quite honest with you, the voice acting in Dino Crisis isn't that bad compared to Resident Evil's ones, which were pretty bad.
I have a little unfinished business to take care of.
Unfinished business.
So anyway, it was back to the antenna room to try and get the awaited helicopter to get us the fuck out of here. But once again, for the second time, the T-Rex would appear. And in this moment, I thought, damn, hopefully this time I don't get eaten. Because at this point, I didn't have any resuscitation packs, so I really had to make a good go at it. At this point I thought I'd really completed the game. But nope, just as backup and the helicopter was arriving, guess who shows up? Mr. T-Rex for the 3rd time. So at this point we're actually having a fight with a T-Rex, and I honestly didn't think there's no possible way we can beat it. But hence the grenade launcher, we had probably at least a good chance. But not me, ended up getting eaten once again. But the funny thing is, the only experience I've had really fighting dinosaurs is playing King Kong. So whilst I didn't beat the T-Rex, I managed to escape its clutches. Where me and Rick managed to escape on an elevator before I had to collect a few ID cards. So once we made it down the elevator and I got the power generators online, I was greeted by a new dinosaur that was a lot more fierce than the raptor and definitely did a lot more damage. And thankfully here, I button mashed to escape this because I tried this before and it actually landed on me and crushed me. So just like before, I had another crane puzzle to do. Turns out that I need another key card, and in order to do that, I gotta move these boxes out of the way. I do like these ones, they are pretty fun to do. Even though there's a lot of searching to do and looking around for certain items to get to the next place to access important parts. One thing I was really intrigued with was the entire facility. There was every turn and corner and angle, there was always something interesting and intriguing about it that you wanted to discover more. Like this particular room here.
You copy, Mike? I found the key to the port, but I got a lizard riding on my tail. I'm
So once again in these games you find yourself heading back to collect certain stuff, and I run into the T-Rex again, for which I can only count being the 4th time I believe. But it turns out this dinosaur is as dumb as he looks, as he gets himself electrocuted, making him stunned out for a little while. So by the time you make it to this part of the facility, especially in the third energy facility, this is when things start to become a lot more difficult, and the back and forth is very prevalent. At this point in the game, I was stuck for a long time. I mean, if at one point I actually forgot to get a certain DDK card from the elevator that there was another dead body was carrying, I forgot completely was there. And for example as well, at this point in the game where one of the research workers dies, but at the point when you first come here, she's still alive. I assumed that she wasn't going to die, but all I had to do was leave the room and come back in which she leaves a memo that has a code, and there's actually blood-stained fingerprints on the side of the wall, and where you can gather them, which is Dr. Kirk's, so you can log into the computer and get the access card. But before all this, like a dummy, I was running around the facility for ages, trying to find and use different fingerprints in order to access the computer, not knowing that really it was up until this part is where I was meant to get the fingerprints. But this is what's so cool about this game, is it keeps you guessing and wondering what it is you're supposed to do without taking your hand and helping you walk through the entire situation. I didn't realize that I had to go out that room just to come back in to get what I needed. So the story really is that good. I mean, it's just like Resident Evil in its ways, but it's also unique. Like Resident Evil has the virus aspect of it all and bioterrorism with these viruses that mutate these zombies and people. But Dino Crisis' story is really interesting and actually had me thinking, yes, it's not just another dinosaur being cloned like Jurassic Park. It turns out that Dr. Kirk was experimenting with some kind of time machine that opened up a portal from 1,000,000 years ago where dinosaurs were coming into the current universe.
To put it in terms that even you can understand, third energy has the ability to replace a pocket in space with one from a different time.
What?
Yes. I came to these conclusions following this evening's final experiment. You've seen the effects yourself. Those beasts were occupying the space this facility is located on almost 65 million years ago.
Right. So that's how those dinosaurs appeared in our time.
Yeah, no shit, Sherlock.
So of course we're left with some strategies and what we want to decide, and I wish I would have chose Gale's because I actually went to look towards the end of the game and actually realised that it was quite easy to get hold of the actual parts that I needed for the generator that was already made. But like an idiot, I picked Rick's idea and ended up having to collect all the parts and put the pieces together myself, which wasn't so bad, but it did take a bit longer. So I've been made aware that there's actually 3 endings in this game, but I just decided to save Rick and Gale. I mean, in all honesty, this game was getting exhausting. That's the only thing I can criticise about it at time if I was to criticise this game. But in all honesty, I think it just was really super challenging. And to be honest with you, I think it's what I needed. Because for so long, we picked up video games, we played them, and they're quite easy. But Dino Crisis really gave me a challenge. When I really think about it now, games like Dino Crisis are the reason why we love video games. And the reason why I honestly would like to play them more often, if they was like this. Problem is with most games these days is they are so easy to play that there really isn't much challenge and incentive anymore, and in fact the games become quite boring because they don't really give you much to do aside from just follow this waypoint and head to this section, whereas games like this, they actually really do keep you invested. On behalf of my subscribers and the commenters who told me to play this game, I really have to thank you for suggesting for me to play this one, because I've never played this game before and I can honestly say that I would probably play it again. And without a doubt, it's definitely one of the best survival horror games that has to be out there of all time. It's definitely not as known as the likes of Resident Evil, but I think it deserves to be, and that's why it would be really nice to see if Capcom would actually remake something like this. Now I can understand the entire rage, guys. When everybody used to talk about Dino Crisis, I was like, is it really that good? And now I get where you guys are coming from. So we're managing to complete the game. I was super happy. Yeah, Kirk didn't get saved. He probably got sent back 60 million years ago to join the dinosaurs. But either way, this is one of the endings amongst many that I can play when I play this game again. So to all of you out there who've been watching, thank you for joining me on this experience. I'd love to know what you think down in the comment section of what you think about my hilarious playthrough. And let me know how you went for your first time, guys, and what you experienced and what you enjoyed about Dino Crisis. And perhaps tell me about some of the endings that I don't know about. Well, anyway, guys, thank you for watching, and this has been The Voice Box. See you soon.
Hello, this is Regina. Thanks for watching, and please like and subscribe to The Voice Box.